Okay, so I'm really, really excited to apply this color to Hannah's hair because we have been blessed with almost all virgin hair. But to keep the outgrowth really soft and natural, I actually mixed 3 different bowls of colors. Yeah, I know it looks like this, but the oxidation does help because it kind of helps you know which formula is what. So my first formula is at a level 6 and a 10 volume. So when I was taught reds, I was always taught the rule of 20, maybe every once in a while 30, but pretty much 20 volume across the board was what was safe. But I'm actually mixing my level 6 with a 10 volume, and then I'm mixing my mid-tone, which is a 7 stroke 4-3, and then equal parts 7 stroke 3-4. So it's a little bit more coppery with a level or with 20 volume. It's gonna definitely change the hair and be more of that mid-tone that's gonna be almost the all-over color. It's gonna feel like there's a lot more of this level 7 going on throughout her head. So I'm mixing those two again together, those reds and coppers with 30 volume. So this one is gonna pack a little bit more punch, and I'm gonna actually do some face framing and some pieces just really organically painted throughout. We're working with 6, 7, and 8 all within the same color range and the same tonalities. So that's why it's at a deeper level and a lower developer at that 10 volume at a level 6, all to her roots, just about an inch of her roots all over. So just analyzing her hair and kind of mapping out in my head where I want that mid-tone, where I want those highlights to pop. And I'm going to take kind of a large diagonal back section here, a little bit bigger than you would think when adding just a solid color, because we are going to divide this into 2. So I'm going to take kind of a big heavy weave pickup through here, and I'm going to do majority of my lighter shade on this underneath part. And these are just kind of those sparkly, just like sparkly bits that kind of come through from the underneath, that brighter copper, those highlights that just kind of elongate and tell the length story of her lengths. The nice thing is that I don't really have to wipe my hands off because we're working all within the same color story. I can actually just go in and apply my level 7 in with some of that that's already on my hands. So it's a nice big chunk, a nice big panel right there that I'm painting that level 7 copper onto. And that's just because it's gonna add that backdrop. And remember I said I wanted it to be even a little bit more, just like more of the predominant tone throughout the rest of her hair is that level 7. And anytime I say highlight, what I'm talking about and referring to is my level 8 copper. So it's about, I would say, like 1.5 inch section, because remember, we're dividing this into 2, and you're just carving off the top of that zigzag, and that's gonna be your highlight, and what's underneath is your low light. And when I'm applying my color, when you're applying red, saturation is everything, and working the product all the way throughout the hair is everything. I'm gonna apply that highlight color, and right up to where I don't want to touch the roots with this highlight color, but I do want to overlap it onto the color that I did apply at her roots. The reason I really don't want to touch her roots with this color is because this is 30 volume, and I don't want there to be any kind of hot roots. So the whole point is that we applied a 10 volume at the root at a level 6, something a lot deeper to ensure that we're not getting hot roots. And what I mean by hot roots is the heat of the scalp makes the color process brighter and a little bit lighter. So because of the heat of the scalp, we really want to take that into consideration and formulate differently for the scalp than we would mid-lengths through ends. So another thing that you could do potentially is if you wanted to, you could use this as a mid-tone here in these underneath bits, and then you could even tip out with that brighter color if you wanted to have more brightness and more of like a color melting effect through the end. I want her to feel like she's got highs and lows and dimension, but all over pretty much just copper. So, so I'm not adding a ton to her ends so that there's like an extreme difference from the roots to the ends. Okay, so then I'm just gonna knock off this top corner, and I'm gonna utilize my mid-tone in this top corner and do a highlight pickup through here so that I can strategically place these top highlights and where I want them to kind of veil over top. So just letting that fall away when you get tangles and curls, just kind of like almost like you're undoing jewelry. It's just a really quick and easy way to get dimension throughout kind of a solid color. It's more like you're applying a solid color throughout the hair. So all the way through those ribbons in that level 8 copper with 30 volume. And then we'll pick up the underneath part, and we're gonna go in and hold my hand. I rest my hand against the root so that I can make sure and not touch the root, but I can really melt those two colors, the root color in with that mid-tone. And then as you're applying your solid color, always dipping back into your bowl, back into your bowl. And your hand is just going down and the brush is going across the hair horizontally like this. And then the minute you feel like the saturation is lacking, dipping back in with your brush and applying horizontally to the hair like that, all the way down the hair shaft. And then you come back through, and then you're working it in again with your fingers to make sure that it touches every single hair and that you can feel the saturation between your fingers so that we can kind of see what we've done and what the difference is. Her roots are turning. So I'm gonna do this exact same thing through the back on the other side, and we will see you back for the front and what we do there. Separate those out, put my hand underneath, apply my level 8, and then really melt it in. Really melt it in to that root color, making sure that it's really, really, really saturated. You can go for these burgundy, deep Merlot colors. You can grab for these kind of brighter coppery colors. And then you have everything in between. So you've got kind of more of that golden, the golden tones with just like a little bit of apricot, or more pinky, or more, there's a million different words, right, for the different tones that we use in blonde. So I do have a level 6, a level 7, and a level 8, but it's really just because the weight of the pigment is heavier in a level 6 than the weight in, you know, your level 7 and level 8. I'm gonna make sure there's lots of gold in the red, that it's a little bit more on that orangier side versus the purpley side, and not really mix any violets into her formula that are gonna combat those yellowy, orangey tones, because what does violet do? Now, sometimes I do mix a lot of brown into a red formula to give it a more natural effect, but we're actually dealing with so much brown in her hair already that I wanted to actually just really go full force with the copper and just utilize kind of the browns that she kind of naturally has in there. So you can see how here, here, and here are all that level 7 with the level 8 just kind of peeking out from the underneath it. And that's just because we wanted to create a little bit of a backdrop. And because she has bangs, you guys, I'm not gonna make it like a very highlighty effect through the front here. I'm actually going to do a little bit of that color melting technique that we had talked about previously, where you're utilizing your level 7 in the mids and then your level 8 on the ends. So what that's gonna look like is I'm just gonna pick up these pieces, just comb them through a little bit, hold my hand underneath, grab my level 7, and just melt it immediately just off the roots. And then I'll grab my level 8 with 30 volume and just kiss it through those ends. You can see all of those ribbons of color, the highs and lows, but so subtle, right? So soft. And then you can see how the 10 volume at her roots really helped to soften the root area so it doesn't have that really heated effect at the root, making it hot roots, which is like the dreaded we don't want.